The Chicago Bulls took the basketball court for the first time in over a week last night in a loss against the New York Knicks. And despite the loss in overtime, the Chicago Bulls actually showed some fight. And we're going to talk about comments from Billy Donovan on the game plan for the team going forward into the rest of the season, how Josh Giddey has stepped up, and some concerns around Coby White. We're going to get to all that plus a little bit of the mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it for today, y'all. And the Bulls lost last night in what a lot of people are calling like the perfect tank loss. It was a entertaining game for sure, right? And the Bulls did show some fight down the stretch of the game. You especially look at Josh Giddey down the stretch. Nikola Vucevic was terrible in crunch time, unfortunately. Coby White had it in, it was just a non-efficient night from Coby White where we really needed him to step up. I think if Coby White played better in that game, we're seeing probably a Bulls win in that case. But, not everybody's focused on wins or losses. Well, wins for this team. There are a lot of people focused on the losses and what that could mean for the Bulls' lottery odds. And Billy Donovan after the game said this. I think at some point you got to be able to talk about winning. The loss of DeMar, Alex, and Zach in terms of scoring and how great those guys are as players, losing those type of guys makes it challenging. But there's a responsibility for the guys that are playing. How can they find a way to do things that impact the outcome of the game? We've got to be accountable for those things. Yeah, and we do. And I want to be clear. We're going to talk a lot about the players, but Billy Donovan, you also have to be accountable. One thing with Billy Donovan that I love and hate, right? Billy Donovan is always very transparent in regards to certain aspects. I don't think he's always as transparent of his shortcomings as a head coach, but, when we hear things about injuries and you get the real, a lot of that time that comes from Billy Donovan. A lot of what Billy Donovan says about why he doesn't play players is true. I mean, some of the logic in it is inconsistent when he's in game, but he does say things that I can understand there. But one thing that we said, we're talking about who's going to step up and be held accountable and impact winning. Billy Donovan, you also got to look at yourself as the head coach and what are you doing to impact winning. Now, I'm always somebody that I say, and I give Billy Donovan a lot of leeway for things like turnovers, right? I'll say there's not a single play in Billy Donovan's playbook that calls for the Bulls to have a turnover. So, I don't necessarily put that on Billy Donovan. But then when you look at some of the functional things, and this is more like the high-level things, we don't move off the ball consistently as a team. You can tell that that's not cooked into the culture of a team, and you find me a team that's successful in having players when they're off the ball just standing around. And I refuse to believe that every player on this team has been one of those players that just stands around. That's a systemic thing. That's something that's wrong with the scheme that you're running. That's something that's wrong with how you're coaching day to day, right? Now, some of the effort, the inefficient shooting, the mistakes, like driving to the lane, Coby driving to the lane and passing out last minute, not leaving the player that you're passing it to with a lot of time to even get off a shot, or that turns into turnovers. I'm not blaming that on Billy Donovan. But when you look at some of the structural things, and this is where it's a difference between playing a player like Buzelis and allowing them to work themselves through their mistakes with minutes, but then also having structure to how you're playing them. And that's where Billy Donovan lacks. Yes, he'll give Buzelis minutes. Buzelis starting 24 minutes tonight, right? He had a block, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, only 5 points. He didn't shoot the ball effectively, 2 of 8. Now, I'm not going to blame the number of shots and say, well, Billy should have ran 14 shots, because we've seen Buzelis, when he's efficient, shoot the ball pretty well, right? And find a way to impact scoring-wise, even with 9, 8 shots, right? But when you look at how he gets those shots, right, that's the thing. Not necessarily looking at the volume, how. You can tell that it's not always part of like some scheme from Billy Donovan. So, Billy, you also have to be better. And that's something that I'm looking at in longevity, not even just win or losing these games, but as far as teaching players to play the right way. That's where I have some of my biggest concern with these young guys that we're going to have coming in. Modest now, we know we're going to have a lottery pick this year, right? Is that if you have 1 to 2 years of wasted development because you're not running structure for these players, how are they going to look? Like Modest already has the mentality that it's all about winning. You don't need to fix Modest Buzelis' mentality. Now, yeah, the functional things and understanding the speed and the strength of the game, that comes with time, right? So Billy Donovan also, I would love to see Billy Donovan hold himself accountable to this as well. Yeah, you want your players to impact the game of basketball, show what they can do to impact winning. Great. I have no problem with any head coach saying that. But how do you expect them to get there when you are basically having them go, and we've seen it. We don't have the players that have that killer instinct that are just, they're just going to fit together seamlessly. Now, I do think Josh Giddey showed a lot in yesterday's game as far as being a focal point offensively and how he can run that offense, and we'll talk a little bit about that here going forward. But I think when you hear these comments from Billy Donovan, another one, they've got to understand how they impact winning. If we don't do a good enough job collectively, players and coaches, in maximizing what goes into winning, how can you possibly be preparing for the future? That is a great question here. And that's the question that really is the biggest question for the remainder of the Chicago Bulls season this year. How are you preparing for the future, right? How are you getting these players ready for the future? How are you yourself as a coaching staff? What are you doing to prepare for the future? It's easy just to say a lot of words, those buzzwords of, oh, I want them to impact winning. I want them to understand. I want them to go. We lost a bunch of leaders. That's all great, right? And when you lose a bunch of leaders, you know who a lot of times you look towards is your coaching for stability and leadership and instilling the right mindset in players of how you want them to execute the game of basketball. So listen, I get it that there are fans that come in and they put it all on the players. They don't really pull a lot on coaches. I try to do both because there is a lot on the players. But let's not overlook the importance of coaching is important. We've seen teams with superstar talent that can't get stuff done because they don't coach correctly. So yeah, when you have lesser talent, then that coaching becomes even more and more important. So it is important to get this shit together and from the coaching aspect of it, right? But as well from the player aspect of it. And that's the biggest thing here is that everything that I'm looking at now from going forward until we find that star, whether it's through the draft or whatever else they develop here, is what are we doing to prepare for the future? What are we doing to get better for the future? Both in the front office and the coaching staff and the players. And this is a team, like I said, this win, I want to give credit because they fought in this win. And we haven't always seen that from this Bulls team. There's been a lot of times where we've seen this Bulls team be in games that that second quarter where the New York Knicks outscored them by almost double digits, we've seen those quarters alone punch and take the Bulls out of the game. They didn't do that last night. So shout out and benefit there. But how are you preparing? Because I tell you what, when I watch this team, a lot of times I see a team that is going off instincts, which is great. But the moment their shot isn't falling, the moment they face some adversity, there's no system. There's no standard operating procedures, right? There's no, let's get back into our game by running these plays. Let's do some simple pick and roll. Let's try to get players open by pick and roll and moving off ball. We don't do those type of things. And I just wonder how much can you truly prepare for your future while you're not instilling those type of things. Now, you also need somebody to step up. Not only in the leadership role, right, but also who's going to identify things and perform. Kind of that calming factor, right, which is what I like to describe it as. And Coby White is a player with the highest usage rate now that Zach LaVine is gone. Nikola Vucevic is the team's highest scorer, and we got let down by both those guys in different ways. While the stat sheet looks fine for Nikola Vucevic. 21 points, 9 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block. The 4 turnovers definitely hurt. But when you look at the clutch time, right, where you need Vooch to step up the most, Vooch disappointed yesterday. He disappointed yesterday. And that's where you need Vooch to be better. 1 of 3 in the fourth quarter for 3 points. That's not enough. Not enough. In overtime, Nikola Vucevic was 0 for 3. You need better from those guys. And Coby White's game, he went 2 of 2 in overtime for 5 points, which is really good, really solid. But overall, this game, Coby White, you need better from Coby White. And Coby is now adjusting to him being the player. And that was something coming into this season. Now, we didn't have to have it as much because we still had Zach LaVine. But coming into the season, I asked the question, like, how Coby adapts now being on defense's boards, right? He's the player that they are aiming to stop now, making sure that they don't get hot. Now, for what it's worth, Coby identified it. He said this after the game. They were mixing up coverages. They were blitzing. They're not coming back, so I just was trying not to force and let the game come to me. Giddey had it going. Ball had it going. Vooch had it going. So take advantage of those moments. If that's how they're going to play me, then I have to be more of a playmaker, screening, those type of things. I love that. Again, I love the words there. I love the fact that he identifies, hey, if they're blitzing me, then that means I have to find the guys that are open. I have to get the ball to the guys that are hot that game, right? And that's again, keep in mind, Coby is still by nature a point guard. I know he's playing shooting guard on this team. He's still by nature a point guard. The 6 assists, that's great, right? The 6 assists is great. And technically, Coby White only had 1 turnover last night. But it's still the things that weren't necessarily turnovers by Coby. Go and look at the number of late shot clock situations where Coby got the ball and he wasn't intentional about it, right? And he has to start making that decision. The drive to the lane and kick out to a player that's not really in good position to shoot is not going to work anymore, right? Coby has to start becoming that player that welcomes contact, right? He didn't get to the free throw line any last night. And I could probably name about 3 opportunities had, instead of him passing out last minute, he tried to take it up to the rim hard, he probably would have gotten at least 2 free throw opportunities out of that time. So that's 4 free throw shots, right? 2 different times of being fouled. That's what Coby needs to start understanding. You can't shy away from the contact. And there was a point in time where Zach LaVine had to learn that too, right? Where Zach LaVine, had to learn, like, no, let me continue to take it up strong, right? And just get through this contact and try to make the difficult shot and force them to foul me. That's the next step of Coby's game, right? And Coby's going to have this the rest of this season and next season to really figure that out. But Coby has to get to that point, man. I'm glad that he's identifying it. I am really glad that he's seeing that, hey, they're trying to mix up the coverages on me. They're trying to confuse me. I also like the realization of, hey, these are the players that's hot. Let me be more of a facilitator there. There are going to be games where Coby has to do that. That's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. But you still got to be more efficient, right? And I think there are just little things that Coby White can tick with on his game that can then help him be more impactful. Because I tell you what, a Coby White that's putting pressure on defenses, that's getting to the foul line, right, to the free throw line, that then changes how teams have to defend you yet again. Yeah, they can blitz you, but if you're using your speed and your size to get to the free throw line, right, now we have to be more conscious of how we're guarding you on drives, which then can open up pressure for your players out there on the perimeter. That's what you have to do. You have to do that. So that's something to watch for in Coby and the rest of this season, is what he's going to do to take more advantage of those opportunities, because they're there for him, right? And he just has to slow down and be more intentional about those opportunities. And overall, we just need better from Coby White. I mean, we do need better from Coby White. He was on a nice stretch where he was averaging over 20 points per game. We need, not to say that it always comes down to, can you score 20 points or more? We just need you to be more impactful. And I don't want to see any more games where Coby doesn't get to the free throw line at all, because he has the type of game that can get him to the free throw line. So that's what I want to see a little bit more from Coby White. But then Josh Giddey, right? And my Josh Giddey haters, I know that people just want to hear just negative about Josh Giddey. You may want to plug your ears on this segment, because it wasn't all bad for Josh Giddey, right? When you look at it, 27 points was a season high. He was 11 of 18 from the field. He hit 4 3-pointers as well in this game, 16 rebounds. He didn't have the assist number that we're used to seeing him, but it wasn't just because of him, it's because other players were doing more facilitating as well. And we see that almost anytime Lonzo, Coby, and Giddey are on the floor together, Giddey's not probably going to get more than about 6 or 7 assists at the most with those guys, because of how much those guys do facilitating as well. So that's just a thing there. So I'm not going to hold that against him. We know that he can get those assist numbers, right? And listen, Giddey, when you look at his performance since Zach LaVine's been gone, right, he is averaging amazing numbers, right? He shot 20 of 36 from the floor and 8 of 14 from beyond the arc over a 4-game span. And he's playing a lot better, right? And the thing with Josh Giddey is, especially with him and the contract situation that's popping up this offseason, of course, it's important for Josh Giddey to show at what he can be offensively. We know Josh Giddey's not there defensively. He's not there, right? I do like the effort that we see from him, and his block numbers, I'm sure he has to be towards the top of the league in blocks per game for point guards. He just has to be, right? He's learning to use his length there really good. I would love to look up that number. But I think overall, when you look at Giddey, like, the thing that Giddey has to be able to show is that, A, at the minimum, you can build your offense around me. I don't think you can build a team around Josh Giddey, but you can structure your offense around my skill set. And that's going to have to be what Josh Giddey shows if he really wants this thing to for him to get the money that reportedly he wants. But that's going to factor in a big part into his contract extension, really, with any team that wants Josh Giddey, right? And so he's the one that's right now, so far since the absence of Zach LaVine, that has stepped his game up the most. Yeah, I mean, Coby's still been pretty much Coby. Nikola Vucevic has fluctuated up and down from being, the Vuce that we've seen of old, and the Vuce that has not been playing necessarily the best. Buzelis is stepping into P. Will's role. He's just being a lot more effective than that, right? But Josh Giddey's the one who, if you look at it, he stepped up the most, and he's made the most out of the extra opportunities that have been presented in front of him, and this is what you want to see from him. This is what you want to see. And so, I'm not a Josh Giddey hater. I'm a Josh Giddey realist. I'm not a Josh Giddey stan. Josh Giddey has some serious things that he needs to work on. But the people that act like Josh Giddey is complete trash and doesn't belong on an NBA team, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. Now, I would say this, this is always one of the questions when it comes to Josh Giddey as well, is how much are you willing to invest to build the type of team that Josh Giddey is going to thrive on the most, right? How much is that already in your game plan? How much of that do you need to change? That's really what the Bulls have to ask themselves the most when it comes down to Josh Giddey. Not is he good or not, because Josh Giddey can be an effective player, especially offensively. But it is how much are you willing to remold and reshape this team, right? And keep in mind the players that fit, because you need players that fit a certain play style to make it work the best, to maximize on what Josh Giddey does bring. And that's a question that he's going to have to look at, to answer with his game, and the Bulls are going to have to figure out as well that question from here the remainder of the season before it's time to extend him. And we'll see where that leads the team. But with that said, man, tomorrow is full mailbag day, but we got a little overhang, so we're going to go ahead and play one voicemail today. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald from Georgia. Of course, the Bulls waived Donovan, and of course they signed a guard to take his spot. And of course, P. Will is hurt, and I fully expect someone like KHT get time at the 4 because this is Billy Donovan, and he's done stupid shit like that before. So it's just frustrating. But it's frustrating, and after like 20 minutes, I'm going to get over it because that's just what the Bulls are, Nothing surprises me. Well, at least not the stupidity part of it. But I called because I wanted to ask you a question, like, which big are you more interested in, the 7'2" center from Duke, or I think his name is Derick from Maryland? Like, if the Bulls, like, get the 5th pick instead of the 8th, and the Bulls have the option to, like, move down to, let's say, where the Spurs are, and I think they might pick up, like, the 10th and 14th draft spot, which will still give them an option of either taking Quinn and would you take 2 bigs? I know the draft is really deep and there's a bunch of high potential players on it, but would you make a move of like saying, calling up the San Antonio Spurs and like, look, we can give you Coby White or we give you Vooch, and we'll move down 3 spots. In return, you give us, both your first round picks. Pick we'll move down to, and the pick behind that, because I think they got like at least 2 in this year's draft. And I think both are going to be lottery picks. But it's probably just a fantasy. But if that option, came about, I would definitely go after both Queen and I want to say Maluach. But what's your opinion? Thanks.
Great question here. Derick Queen or Khaman Maluach? Listen, I go back and forth all the time. Derick Queen is a guy that I've slowly but surely started to not just like his game, but to love his game. The drive that he has, right? That fight that he has. That's something that we severely need on the team. And that's one of those intangibles that's kind of hard to quantify if you want to have a conversation based off stats and things like that. But Derick Queen he's just a go. Like, he just goes, man. And there's something that I respect about that. a little undersized, right? He doesn't bring the size that a Khaman Maluach brings, right? The true center size and wingspan. But listen, he's still 6'10". He's mobile. He has that true low post back to the basket game. He has really good footwork already as well, right? I like his ability to get to the free throw line. There's more and more I like every single time I watch Derick Queen play basketball, right? Now, he doesn't stretch the floor. He doesn't really have that. His three-point attempts, I like that he realizes that that's not his game, right? But I think when you look at this guy and what he can bring at being 20 years old, he'll be 21 the majority of next season, man. When you look at Derick Queen and what he brings as a potential kind of more modern center, I love it. Now, Khaman, efficiency, right? This is a guy that's going to be able to run the floor. He's going to be a lob threat for you. There's some doubt about what he can turn into as far as a shooter, right? As far as even in the mid-range. But I think you have to take your gamble with that. But I mean, both these guys, man, I don't know who I would pick between the two, to be 100% honest with you, Reginald, because it's like both these, and wait to the combine, because I think that with Khaman Maluach playing on the team that he does in Duke, he doesn't get a whole lot of offensive opportunities, right? That's really not his role. But I think that he's a guy that when you get to the draft combine and you get into these scrimmages, he can really start shining there as far as how he can score. And same thing with Derick Queen, right? So a lot of this is going to come down to what's shown in the draft combine. But overall, man, I don't think you can really go wrong with either one of these guys. I would love to see these guys in a Bulls uniform, either one of them in a Bulls uniform, to be 100% honest with you. And as I do go through my draft process, we'll, of course, talk more and more about those guys. As far as the trade with the Spurs, I just don't think it's going to happen, Reggie. I think now, especially with Wemby going down, that's going to be a team that's looking to hold on to their picks because, hey, listen, they got a chance at Cooper Flag, right? They got a chance at Ace Bailey, which would be crazy to add to what they have going on down there already. But I don't think that the Spurs are going to be looking to deal either one of those picks. They're far enough away to where I think they're still going to be trying to add that young talent to that team, at least in my opinion. But great questions. Great voicemail there, Reggie. We appreciate you leaving that. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right again, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.